Welcome to the Exposing Mold podcast. My name is Keely Severson. Eric and Alicia are both out today, but I am here with Deric Cahill, who I found from stalking TikTok. I think your TikTok
Yay.
handle is the Bold Fam. Is that right, Deric?
Just bold fam. But
Bold
yeah.
Fam. Okay, Bold Fam on TikTok. Awesome. I was mindlessly scrolling on TikTok, and what got my attention is an issue that you had while taking your child to an urgent care where you were not treated with any type of respect from the doctor that you saw. This is the red flag of my life with doctors. And so this was a giant wake up call that this is happening widespread. And there was a specific term that you used that made me reach out to you. And you said the weaponization of this doctor's position. For anyone who might be listening in our audience who's not familiar with the rundown, can you give us a recap and catch everyone up to speed, which I'm sure you're so sick of talking about by now, but for the other people?
I actually the last couple of days I've been thinking like, yo, I need some separation from this because every time I have to go yesterday, the day before, one of the older videos like went viral again. And like all my videos were getting comments asking for the updates, and it like made me like relive almost some of that like trauma of going through it. So I was like, I need some fucking separation from this. But
Yeah.
for you, Keely, I will go through it once more, and I'll give everyone the TLDR of what happened on that day. So my wife and I have three kids, 14-year-old, a 7-year-old, and our youngest is Rowan. He's 18 months old. And when our kids get ill, like fevers, like typically around like the 3 or 4 day range, we're gonna just take them in to be seen. Like, is anything crazy going on here that we're not seeing? Do they have an ear infection, strep, like something that we aren't, equipped to take care of? Because as parents, we're the first line of triage. We decide, does our kid need a doctor? Does he need an aspirin or a Band-Aid? We're those people. So we took Rowan into an urgent care that we'd never gone to before. It was like a specific pediatric urgent care. And we went in and presented, hey, here's Rowan. He's been having a fever for the last few days, and we just wanted to kind of get your eyes on him. The doctor um, looked at his ears, she listened to his chest and looked at his throat, and sat back and told my wife and I, like, hey, everything looks good. Everything sounds fine. His throat's a little red, but that could be from the fever. And the next thing that she said was, you should just take him to the emergency room because this could be anything. And she started naming like she mentioned pneumonia, which I'll just isolate that for a second. It's like, all right, I'm not a doctor, but I've been a parent long enough. If you have a pneumonia, you're gonna probably hear something in your lungs. You're gonna have some sort of symptoms showing, struggle breathing, maybe a low oxygen
Like
blood
something that she
level.
could have looked for to check.
Yeah, or like even the little pulsometer that you have on your finger, or they did it on his big toe. Something would show like low oxygen levels, something, right? But to start with, hey, everything's fine. Go to the ER for this. Just instantly, I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, what does that even mean? But she said like get chest X-rays, blood work, rule out blood, and like it was like throw the kitchen sink at this kid because he has an unexplained fever for 3 days. The caveat is like, if we went in there and it's like, hey, our son's had a fever for 30 days in a row. Do you know what's going on? And she was like, get the fuck out of here, go to the emergency room. It's like, yeah, okay. But 3 day, 4 day fever, we were more looking for assurance. Like, hey, it's probably viral. Give it hey, look for XYZ at home for the whatever. I looked at her. It was silent after she said that, like 30 seconds of silence because I had no idea what to say. And I just said, what? And she just repeated herself. And I am a relatively outspoken human being. And I said, this was really transactional. That was it. No one said another word. She said nothing in response to that. And then we just all stood up and we left the room. Um, in the parking lot of the office, before we even pulled away, I left them a Google review, and I wrote like a really extensive email to their customer service, like email being like, this is like the most bullshit doctor's experience that I've ever had in my entire life. And we went home. We stopped for coffee. We went home. Rowan ate, took a nap. A couple hours later, Child Protective Services was knocking on our door. Um, like specifically looking for a severely dehydrated child that needed medical attention. And, you know, we worked with CPS on our doorstep. She came in, she talked with us, she saw Rowan, and she left without incident. She was with us for maybe like 25 minutes, but she said to me specifically, based on the report, I was looking for like a kid that was like about to die. Like that's the way the report came in. And then fast forward a week, it took us a week to get access to his medical records from the visit, and the doctor lied on the medical reports. Like so, and it's so insidious because when you can get that and then look back and like be in the room with her, she knew immediately what she was going to do when we left that office, because she went and within 30 minutes wrote our report and quoted that me and my wife said that my son wasn't acting normally, that he wasn't eating or drinking, that he had a weak cry, and like none of that shit was real. And it's crazy, especially like the dehydration part, because my son's teething and he was drooling all down my wife's arm during the visit. So it's like that's doesn't make any sense.
Not a dry
Like
presentation.
how could you have possibly assessed him for dehydration as he's crying tears from you looking at him and as he's drooling from teething? So it was all a lie. Fortunately, we're all cleared by CPS at this point.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you. Big win, big win. Although I would have traded it. I didn't want this to happen at all, but yeah, August 11th, we're cleared by CPS, and it was specifically cleared like no evidence of wrongdoing at all.
Was this the first time you've had any weird experience with doctors?
Yeah, dude, and that's the crazy part.
So
Like,
you've had just like great, awesome experiences with doctors, and then this just one experience totally sideswiped you.
oh yeah, like in 13, 14
Because this
years
has
of
been every experience that I've had with doctors has been some screwed up, totally messed up thing. So like, I
yeah,
didn't know that this was that shocking to you that this happened. Honestly,
yeah, I've had a lot of people rightfully point out privilege, which I think is some topic that needs to be brought up. Like, I live in an affluent area, I'm a white man. Like, I think that the experiences change greatly for women, for people of color, for people that are impoverished and they're not financially well off. So yeah, it's like I'm fortunate that this was my only experience
but
dealing
what
with
the
something
hell is
like
going
that.
on with medicine that like you have to be a white male to not be treated like shit by the whole medical system? Because this
I
is
think it's
like,
just, well, I think I mean, it's the perceived or what, I mean, and this isn't I don't know if this is the answer or not, but like perceived access to resources, like just perception. I don't know, man. But yeah, in 14 years, not that I've always been like best friends with the doctors, but I've never had an experience with a doctor where I felt compelled to go leave a negative review. Well, other than one time a doctor scratched the inside of my kid's arm or his ear, and I did leave a bad review for him. But that was it. Like, I left a Google review. Like, I didn't go to TikTok and be like, "Look what the fuck happened to me."
right. And
Did
it wasn't a weaponization of their position either.
Yeah, well, that was, and it's terrifying, man.
Because this
Like,
was a personal attack on you, because it's my understanding when I was looking at this situation was you threatened someone's ego because you called out that they were not doing their job correctly, nor were you given the service that you went there to seek. And then because you basically told on them and brought public attention to it, something happened to you as a form of revenge. Because I can't see any other context for a doctor willfully and scornfully lying in your child's medical chart. That is
yeah,
unhinged behavior.
it's why, and the crazy part, and I've had to like, this is one of the reasons I need some separation from it, because like I've never, this is another thing I'm really fortunate. I've never like been a victim before. You know, like I've never been victimized by something, and I'm now having to like relive that trauma, and then also have people tell me that like I'm not telling the truth. And it's been eye-opening from that perspective as well, because it is a crazy story. Like, it's fucking unbelievable.
So many people are accusing you of lying about the experience
Not
on
necessarily
top of,
lying, but
okay.
like what's missing. Like, oh, this can't be the whole story. And it's like, bitch, it's the whole story. Like, but I
I
need
think
to,
that speaks to people putting doctors on this crazy pedestal. Like, doctors can do no harm, and that's not, I mean, they're also humans.
well, the challenge, and here's the thing, 14 years I've been raising children and taking them to doctors. I'm 35. I've also, as myself, never had a negative experience with doctors. So we're talking about less than a fraction of a percentage of doctors that would ever do something like this doctor did. And I'm sure that scales, like across how many visits a year people are going to see and how many of them are actually evil pieces of shit. So I get that it is unbelievable because the vast majority of doctors, I do genuinely believe, are good people. But in the instances, these doctors have blanketed protection, 100% plausible deniability as doctors. And that's where it gets dangerous because in this instance, obviously, we have a doctor that's not acting in good faith, and there's nothing that we can do about it. There's no layers of accountability that can be held to her. And that's where it gets a little questionable. You're giving an entire group of people a get out of jail free card with no ability to hold anyone accountable. And that's wild.
Well, yeah, and all the doctors have that authority.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I believe that most of them act in good faith, but this one, to your point, just didn't. And yeah, you're having people that are coming out and saying like, "Hey, there's oh, it's easy. The doctor can't say her side of it because of HIPAA," and it's like, bro, we were in that room for no more than 5 minutes. She can only squeeze so much fucking context into a 5-minute meeting. Like, what could possibly have happened in that room to substantiate the claims that she's making in a 5-minute meeting? Not to mention, we got a second opinion from another doctor like 5 hours later that no signs of dehydration. They told us, go home, watch him. It sounds viral. Go home, watch him for a few days. The same night his fever broke, and the next day he was completely back to normal from a fever perspective. So like we're talking about 24 hours and everything's fine. We have one doctor that is citing to CPS, this kid's about to fucking die. Another doctor says he's fine, go home. So that subjectivity is dangerous to exist in medicine. And the second part is we have video evidence both before and after that appointment that show Rowan acting completely normal. So it's like, is he lack of energy or is he full of energy, right? Like not eating, he's eating lunch in some of these videos. So it's like, and all of this evidence that I have, I still felt like the underdog. I still feel like the underdog.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say you're wrong about most doctors being good guys, but it's just that my experience throughout my life and the community that I work with, our personal experience with having an environmental illness that mainstream medicine doesn't really recognize, we're totally treated like crazy idiots all the time. I mean, I know chronically mold sick people who told their story of homelessness because of exposure in their house to their nurse during birth and had their children permanently taken, never to return. I know people who are kind of living on the road because their houses became uninhabitable from water damage, and they've had to go dark and cut contact with all family completely because of CPS threats. And mainstream medicine just flat out doesn't recognize some illnesses. If there's not a test to find it and there's not a pill to cure it, they can't validate that syndrome. And so there's a whole host of people that are constantly invalidated by medicine. And not only that, it does go a step further where the doctor's position is directly weaponized against their life in some form, whether it's their family life or something else. So that was specifically the point that stood out to me in listening to your content, was like, what is it that, because I mean, this doctor, I would highly doubt that did this to you is ever going to have any form of punishment. So like, what is it sociologically that society attributes like this doctor god status to, that they can do no wrong, where like most people could barely even believe this or struggle to see this? And then also, what is it woven within the medical community or the social structure of medicine that allows there to be no punishment for something as obviously wrong as falsifying medical records? And I hope that you can prove that, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that we're gonna have is we're gonna live and die by that 5-minute meeting that unfortunately
You probably didn't record it.
Yeah, I didn't record it, which if I fucking recorded that meeting
It would
and
be
then everything,
hands down
I'd be on
over.
CNN, dude. Like this would be probably like national news that this doctor legitimately just absolutely weaponized the position. Like it would be open and shut case unbelievably. So it's going to come down to this 5 minutes where it was me, my wife, and this doctor in this room, and it's going to be forever subjective. He said this, she said this. The only thing that I'm saving grace on is that, like I said, you can only shove so much shit in a 5 minute meeting. What is she going to try to detail in a 5 minute meeting that disproves the Google review that I left and the email that I left and the videos that I have and the second doctor? So I think I have 100% introduced a pretty significant amount of doubt into this. But yeah, man, like the road to accountability just isn't quite there.
Yeah, and that's I gotta pause 1 second. I gotta get the baby.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I find concerning sociologically is that there could be a situation where the road to accountability isn't there. Just in general with doctors having so much authority over our health, over our families, over accusations, over our medical records that travel with us throughout the rest of our life. But lucky for you, that was a rare and isolated experience. So hopefully you will never have to deal with anything like that again.
Yeah. I mean, it shivered my timbers, dude, for sure. Just the thought of some agency that has the current authority to be able to like potentially remove your kids from the house, especially when it was a fraudulent report. So like we were reeling, man. It was not a fun time to be alive, and I was just
Were you like
thankful.
legitimately scared, or was every part of your body like, oh no, no
I was
way?
fucking terrified, dude. Because when you're in that situation, your emotional brain, I just couldn't get it to shut off. Like, of course, I had my moments where I could like think logically, and I was like, hold on a second, hold on a second. We've
Yeah.
got video, we've got the second visit, we've got my review. Like, this is very layered doubt that's been introduced here. But then the emotional side of it was like, but what if? Like, what if, because you hear the horror stories, like, wow, what if we get like nefarious activities that happen here now? But then you go back to the logical side, and it's like, hold on, the kid had a fucking fever that we just didn't. I mean, like that can't be. Like, I can't imagine a scenario where, and now that it's over, yeah, it's like I can't imagine a scenario where CPS is like, you didn't take your kid to the emergency room for a low fever. You got to have those kids come with us. Like, it sounds absolutely
Right.
ridiculous.
Right.
But when you're going through it and there's so much uncertainty and you're not in
And
control
the
of the
accusation
situation,
is severe dehydration. That's almost like medical neglect, like
well,
that.
that's what
That's
it was
not what the
classified as,
accusation
is
was in the
medical
visit.
neglect. Which is another silly thing when you think about it, because the definition of medical neglect is failing to seek, obtain, or follow through with medical advice that could result in like permanent injury or death. And there were no symptoms showing that that was a risk at all. And then obviously with his symptoms resolving themselves within 24 hours, I think just showed that she was full of shit, the whole time. But the problem is doctors are protected. Period. End of story. The
Right.
only thing this doctor has to say, front to end sentence with a period at the end, is I had a suspicion. I had a feeling. Period. No more talking. That is her protected by her whatever, the government's protection for medical providers. The only way to cut through that is if you're dealing with an organization or a body of overseers that have like a hunger for truth.
But they're all on the same team. They all play together.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an uphill battle, which is like, unless you have someone, unless you can appeal to someone that has an overwhelming hunger for the truth, no one is compelled to research it. The organization that she works for isn't compelled to reach for it or research it because she's obligated. She's a mandated reporter. Boom, done. That's like the end of the story. Even though, especially in the state of Texas, it's a felony to report fraudulently to CPS, and if you're a mandated reporter, like you're
So she committed a felony.
in the state of Texas.
Are you in Texas?
Yeah, so we're in Texas. If a mandated reporter submits a fraudulent claim, it's a felony. But that's great, beautiful sentence that you have in law. who are you going to get to prosecute it? Because the police won't file a report against it because it's not like an active crime going on. No one robbed my store. A criminal or an attorney that I could hire won't take it because there's no money at the end of the road. It's like, what are you claiming as damages? Like, your son's fine. There's no medical negligence. And then a prosecutor, they're not going to take it either because, again, it's he said versus she said. It's not a very clear-cut case. So unless I have a video recording or audio recording of this doctor lying and then following through with a report, there is no law to pursue. So yes, technically, did she commit a felony? 100%. Is there any scenario on planet Earth that anyone holds her accountable to it? 0% chance.
Right. Will you be, I don't know if your recording laws allowed in Texas, but will you be recording your visits from now on?
1,000,000%. And again, I'm hoping that it's going to be a silly waste of my storage space, considering my history with medicine, being.
It
It's
actually
always.
saved my ass this summer.
Did it?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I will
In
record everything again because, I mean, for the
in
off chance
February,
that
I
this happens
brought
again.
my daughter to the urgent care and I requested that they screen for pneumonia because she had a cough for like 3 weeks and I heard a little bit of rattling in her lungs. And instead, they refused the pneumonia screening, and instead they wrote in her discharge paperwork that the reason she was seen was not for a pneumonia screening, but was because we didn't have a primary physician locally, which wasn't the reason for the visit. And so I wrote a bad review, which is probably how you got on my For You page.
Yeah, the algorithm really does be algorithming sometimes.
And I was like, I will never go to another doctor's appointment without recording. I can't believe she lied on this paperwork. And of course, nobody cared when I said it. But the next time I had to go to the urgent care, they looked at my phone, and it was actually a staph infection that they were trying to tell me was a bug bite. And I was like, well, are you going to culture it? And they were like, well, and they looked at my phone and they're like, yeah, we'll culture it. So she actually got treatment then, but
Yeah,
I would recommend recording your appointments
yeah,
for anyone who can legally.
yeah. It's just a really slippery slope. Like, have you seen Take Care of Maya?
No,
Oh, have you heard of it?
no.
Oh, unbelievable! You should definitely watch it because
Is that a movie?
it's a documentary on Netflix.
Okay.
I'll give you the quick rundown, but it kind of be in your wheelhouse. It's kind of an obscure, kind of medically unrecognized diagnosis that this girl had, and it was being treated by ketamine.
Oh,
So
okay.
so like, they put her in she was like 11 or 12 years old or something, and like the treatment, a doctor prescribed treatment in Mexico that was like a medical induced coma with high doses of ketamine. The girl had like this chronic acute pain thing, like where she would just get really bad pain and unexplained reasons. But anyways, they're back home in Florida, in Tampa, and she had gone like a year without any symptoms or any problems. But one day she was in severe pain. She goes to the hospital, and the mom goes to the hospital alongside her and was like demanding that the doctors give her ketamine. Like, she needs ketamine. That's the only thing that she needs ketamine for. And the doctors called CPS because they were like, what the hell's going on here? Like, this lady is
Oh,
trying to get us to
wow.
like pump this girl
Yeah.
full of ketamine. CPS comes in this certain situation. CPS is where the ball got dropped. So in mine, the doctor fucked up. CPS was actually the good guy, helped see the truth. In this one, I think the doctors actually did the right thing. CPS dropped the ball with this and put this family through. Like, the girl was pretty much a prisoner in a hospital for 6 months, separated from her family. And it wasn't until her mother killed herself that they released the girl back into the father's custody. They were trying to say the mom had like Munchausen syndrome, and was making this girl sick just by talking it into existence, so to speak. But it's a really compelling documentary about the abuses of the system.
That's wild because Munchausen syndrome is a very common diagnosis for parents who try to advocate for their kids when they do have severe mold exposure and the doctors don't acknowledge it. I spoke with a military family about 2 years ago, and the neurologist accused the mom of Munchausen by proxy because her superstar all-star league pitcher son went from high performance to non-functional OCD within 8 weeks after they moved into a really waterlogged home. And she was accused of that, actually.
Yeah, I think the on both sides of the equation, you run into there's not enough checks and balances to hold people accountable on both medicine and
Yeah.
CPS. If in medicine a doctor makes a claim, there's no way to hold them accountable if it was not made in good faith. And on the CPS side, if they're not acting in good faith, that can also be a really uphill battle to try to disprove that because they're kind of in partnership with the courts and then they have control of the system. And in the take care of Maya instance, I do. I don't know if this will be a popular opinion or not. If anyone listening that saw that, I believe that the doctors did make the right call with how the mother was acting and what she was pushing for, even though she was advocating like as a non. I don't know what the hell is going on here. I just have this lady trying to get me to put high doses of drugs into this girl. I can see the side to call CPS, but where it broke was when CPS got involved, they talked to the doctor that diagnosed the girl with this condition, the doctor that was giving her ketamine dosages, that was giving the parents this diagnosis, and they ignored it and kept the girl in CPS
Oh,
custody.
wow.
Yeah, so because they didn't agree with that doctor now. So now you get into this broken system of like, well, hold on a second. Like, what are you looking for here?
What a
Um,
rabbit hole.
yeah, and then it turns out that that specific child abuse pediatrician, which I've never even heard of before, has done this like over and over and over again. Um, just removing kids from families without really doing due diligence.
I am so surprised that that could be like a known thing and that physician's license wouldn't be pulled after that.
Well, there's another group that got in touch with me after the video called Parents Behind the Pinwheels, if you've ever heard of that. They're a group of people. See, I'm all in all, I feel very lucky for what happened to us. Like, we had a fever and a doctor was being an absolute crazy asshole. Like, very clear cut. There was no like, oh, what's Rowan wasn't covered in bruises and broken bones and shit. And they were like, this is abuse. Like, this was very, very simple. Parents Behind the Pinwheels is about parents that are taking their kids in to, hey, my kid fell, and they're getting x-rays and discovering broken bones. And it turns out that they have like childhood rickets or like brittle bone disease, and CPS is getting involved in removing kids from families, even when doctors and professionals are saying, no, this kid has this gene defect. And they're still not letting go of the kids. So like there's some pretty crazy examples out there. And I'd
Wait,
like
there's
to,
a whole organization dedicated to that?
yeah,
So it's got to be
parents
fairly
behind the
common.
pinwheels. Well, and this is another one that's so challenging because like as a doctor, right? If I'm a doctor and I do an x-ray and I see a bunch of broken bones in a kid, I'd probably be like, what the hell's going on here? But that's where the CPS side of it can fall apart because instead of doing due diligence and hearing expert testimony, they're making their own determinations and picking and choosing what data to listen to, and it can get very, very, very dangerous really quickly.
It's like on TV, doctors are portrayed as these medical detectives that will dig deep to find the truth, and it just doesn't translate into real life. I feel like if doctors just have to have like a 15-minute conversation to get more information and then maybe fact check it on the backside, that would probably be
Well,
a lot more helpful than tearing families apart.
Well, I think if you look at, and we're getting down some weird rabbit holes, but if you look at like the progression of medicine over the last 50 years, 50 years ago, your local family physician was just some dude that had like a house in in some strip mall that would probably come to your house, or like it was a family owned doctor. But now everything is going private. Like the place that we took our son to, they just raised $40 million in venture capital to keep opening facilities. And if you're raising venture capital cares about one thing:
Profit.
profitability. So that doctor to spend 15 more minutes with us is just money that she's not bringing in the door from the next patient. So they're no longer incentivized to spend time with a family. They're incentivized to get
Yeah.
you in and get you out as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And that's not medicine anymore. That
Right.
and dude, that's what it felt like in the I keep referring to this as a meeting, not even an appointment with a doctor. I refer to it as a meeting with this doctor, and it was transactional. I had a business transaction with this woman, and it was a horrendous experience. It wasn't a medical interaction. Nothing about it felt medical.
That concerns me for the future of medicine because if this is happening so widespread now and people are kind of like justifying it, making excuses for it, sweeping it under the rug, how much more power are doctors going to have over people in health and children and people's rights in another 50 years? Because it seems like they've just been inching forward and forward and forward on total takeover.
Yeah, well, as things progress faster than laws can keep up with, I think that's the reason we have this problem that we're in right now. Is that 50 years ago, if a doc, well, I don't even know if CPS existed 50 years ago, 30 years ago,
Yeah, okay.
if a doctor reported to CPS, like that was like your family doctor, like it was probably carried some weight. But
Right.
also CPS was integrated to stop like the rampant abuse of children, like legit, like getting beat the shit out of. And now it's turned into like a doctor can call because my kid has a fever. Like it just isn't catching up. And if my doctor's incentivized to have profit, they should not have overwhelming and sweeping free like no liability within that
Yes,
office.
that is a really good point. They shouldn't have like when they're incentivized to do things a certain way because they get paid more for it, they have to be accountable to some degree. But I guess they're not going. That would be such a catch 22. They can't see more people and do even more of a shitty job and then still have full liability because can you imagine the breakthroughs?
Yeah, well, everyone is expected to make a CPS report if they feel like a CPS report is needed, right? You could call CPS on anyone that you want, and if you feel like it, as long as it's made in good faith. But the fact that a doctor levels that up, like this lady called CPS and 3 hours later they're on my door. Like people were like, that's fucking unheard of. That quickly you had a CPS agent at your door. And that's where this needs to change a little bit because all that needed to happen on our end is if we got a CPS agent that responded that also had that unwavering belief in medicine and came to our door already judging
Mm,
us. Already, why didn't
oh
you
my
do what the
gosh.
why didn't you do what the doctor said? Why wouldn't you do that? And this could have gone sideways really, really quickly. So we got lucky that we got an agent that
That's
came
so
that
scary.
just wanted to seek the truth. Yeah, dude, it's terrifying. Like, I'm not even kidding you. A little bit of me wants to leave the state of Texas right now, like just move to be away from this because
I
now, like, obviously the videos went viral, and now I'm like scared about further retaliation. Like, she knows our address, she knows my kids' names. Like, is she gonna try to find ways to get back? Because if she's as evil as she is to do what she did, what else is she capable of doing?
Well, that's the thing. She has a lot to protect. And when people have a lot on the line, they can become a total psychopath to protect it. And I'm not making accusations against her. I have no idea who she is. But if she already went above and beyond to kind of cover her ass, or she's not going to stop now. Who would?
Yeah.
Not when
So
you have your career, reputation, and income on the line and license.
yeah, that's I mean that's the thing that I'm going for.
But
I
it's
filed.
not on the line because there's nothing you can do because there is no checks and balances. And I don't understand that at
Well, that
all.
I did file a report to the Texas Medical Board, and
Yeah.
on the same day I got the clear from CPS. I got a letter from them that said we're not even going to do an investigation, and they even had the audacity to tell me that the doctor always acted in the best interest of the child, and I was like, you
Except
got to
for when
be.
she falsified the medical records and committed a felony.
Well, that was pretty much my response. Was like I'm floored right now that as a governing body of medicine, the overwhelming amount of evidence that I gave to you guys, you're telling me that she acted in the best interest of Rowan. And I went on to just explain some more things, but I appealed, and I can actually go be in person to hear the appeal. Um, so I'm hoping I get one shot. I have one shot to appeal it and be heard. And I'm just hopeful that they'll look into it. And that's kind of what I ended with them. I was like, I sent them a couple links to some peer written articles from doctors talking about the weaponization of CPS. I was like, I'm not like making something new up here. Like this isn't like something that's never been heard of before. This is happening. And the fact that you guys are dismissing it, not even taking a moment to do any investigation, sets a dangerous precedent. So I'm hoping that they'll take that and they'll hear it out.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I do hope that I hope you get justice in the form of the truth coming out and everyone knowing the truth, and I hope you get justice in the form of Like this at least causes enough awareness to make doctors who would do this think twice, or something down the line happens from this being a catalyst that, you know, something can get put into motion to be add a little bit more protection for families, because of course if a kid's in a bad situation, no one wants to see anything bad happen to them and no one wants to see that not reported. But when we're having conversations about abuse of power and weaponization of position, and it's disrupting just the average person because of the way medicine has changed over the last, you know, 50, 100 years, that's a socially concerning issue that will affect everyone regardless of race, gender. I mean, I mean, it's obviously a problem that's spreading through medicine that anyone's a target at this point.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll see. We'll keep fighting the good fight.
If anyone wants to follow your social media, how can they locate you online?
At Bold Fam on TikTok. And from there you can find everything else because I have a link in my bio.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Keely. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.